My name is Devonte, and I've been a software engineer for almost 5 years. And for this video, I want to give you guys a true review of what the last 5 years has really been like for me. The good, the bad, the ugly, everything. I'm pretty much here to give you guys all the details, because I'm sure some of you are pretty much either in college or applying for jobs right now, and you're probably watching this video because you're curious to see what I'm going to say about what it's actually been like to work in this field in the last couple years, especially what it's like working in this field right now, in this economy, in this presidency. Let's get into it though. So 5 years ago, I got my first software engineering internship. And when that first paycheck, when it graced my bank account, my whole world completely changed. Right then and there, I got more money in that one check than I had ever had sitting in my bank account. And I can't even begin to explain how this changed my outlook on life. And I'll be honest, I made a lot of money over the last 5 years, and every single cent has been a blessing. I grew up in a tax bracket just below middle class, but not quite poverty. Just that weird in between that everybody finds themselves in when your parents aren't really super well off. So having my current salary feels like true freedom. I swear to God, there's a unique piece to having all of your bills on autopay. I no longer need to check my bank app when I'm about to eat out. I don't have to live vicariously through travel vlogs, and I can confidently pick up the entire tab if I'm out with my friends. And that level of financial freedom has been incredible for me. Not once in the last 5 years has that feeling ever gotten old. But that's what you would come to expect in this kind of career, and that's probably why you're studying it, if not for you being also passionate about coding, right? You are doing this for more than just the money, I hope. I'm not going to shame you for that though. Money's important. We need it. It's literally a requirement for survival. Don't let anybody tell you you can't do anything just for money. It's going to be harder for you, but do what you got to do. I also want to talk about what career growth has been like for me though. I think career growth in tech is a pretty big plus for getting into this field, specifically because in other fields, it just comes down to how long you've been there. But in tech, it's a little bit different. The learning curve is steep, but it's rewarding. So far in the last 5 years, I've gone from junior level to mid-level, which isn't super impressive considering that a lot of people with this amount of experience would have already been senior by now. But for me, I still consider this an accomplishment considering I didn't even go to a school that had a computer science course. And on top of that, quite literally a college dropout. So the progress I've made so far, still progress. What's unique about tech though, in general, is how quickly you can advance if you're dedicated. For me, each year brought new challenges, technologies, responsibilities, and right now I'm currently on a mission to become a senior engineer. Mostly because I suspect that title comes with a bit of added job security, considering if you went on LinkedIn right now and you just started scrolling down through all of the job listings, almost all of them are looking for a senior engineer. For me, I feel like if I have that on my resume, it makes me that much more marketable. Now I can actually compete in those spaces where I imagine a bunch of senior software engineers are competing. I don't want to be there with my little software engineer 2 trying to compete for a senior role. It's going to be tough. It's going to be slim pickings. It's definitely going to take a lot of commitment and grit in order for me to actually make that jump, especially taking into consideration I feel like the reason that I haven't gotten to senior yet is because pretty much everybody on my team is a senior engineer. So I have to match their energy. Like I have to be as good as them in order to actually progress. But it's a little more difficult when they have more experience than you, not just in the field, but at the actual company that you're working at. Like they literally know more about the code base that you're working in, so obviously they're going to have bigger impact. And it's a little bit hard to measure up to that. And you can start to feel a little bit of imposter syndrome. I know I definitely have in the past, but I get over things quickly, so imposter syndrome doesn't really hold me back for very long. But just some food for thought if you're also like trying to get promoted. It's going to take time. It's going to take time, and also technically the fastest way to get promoted is to just apply to somewhere else. Keep that in mind. I also want to talk about the creative freedom that comes with being a software engineer. When you stop and you look around, you'll see that the entire world runs on tech. And as a software engineer, it's kind of like being a wizard in a world that runs on magic. You not only have the power to build anything, but you also have the mental space to be a dreamer or a visionary. Most people don't really have cushy jobs that let them think about what they'd want to build. Everyone's just working this 9 to 5 and they're like, okay, I'm hoping I make enough for rent. I'm hoping no surprise bills pop up. These roles are well compensated, and so that extra mental bandwidth it gives you a lot of freedom. Though this mostly depends on what your work-life balance looks like. Either way, once you realize how easy it is to actually build something, you never really look at the world the same again. The ceiling for what is and isn't possible becomes sky high. But again, this only matters if you have the mental bandwidth and time to actually look at these things outside of work. I'm looking at you guys at Amazon. Yes, that sweatshop you call a company. You poor souls. Which leads right into the bad that I want to talk about. I specifically want to talk about the burnout cycle that almost everyone in tech has been burned by. For me, my first job was quite literally meeting hell. It was almost as if every potential for efficient communication was mandated to be a meeting. But the crazy part is, as a software engineer, those meetings aren't really included in your workload. Like, the work that you're supposed to do is considered completely separate from all of the meetings that you're attending half the time. 4 hours of your day could be straight meetings, but you're still expected to somehow write code, which is the job they're actually paying you for. And the stress compounds once you start to realize that those meetings often overlap with really important, crucial deadlines, which means if you want something like a promotion, you're gonna have to start working late hours in order to meet those deadlines so that you appear responsible and dependable. It's a vicious cycle that can quickly lead to mental exhaustion and decreased productivity. And nowadays, a lot of companies preach work-life balance and they try to find good ways to actually protect the time of their employees, but many still find it pretty challenging to actually find that balance, especially startups, because the whole nature of the startup is you're supposed to be in the nitty-gritty, working 80 hours a week in order to get that project off the ground. But you really only do that if you believe in the mission. And honestly, the other thing is that the constraints of the 9 to 5 is something you don't really feel until you start to try and decide to do your own thing. Only then do you start to realize how crucial those 8 hours in the day actually are. That is time that you are investing in making someone else's vision come true, and time that you are not investing in your own vision and your own ideas. Is time that you're definitely being paid for, and paid for well in most cases, but you can't get time back. That is not a renewable resource. And I'm not gonna lie, ever since I started working a 9 to 5, I always wondered how my parents ever managed to get anything productive done after work, especially after being burned out. Shout out to every mom and dad out there. Though luckily there's a bunch of courses on how to overcome and avoid burnout on Skillshare, which is the largest online learning community with a wide breadth of topics ranging from beginner to advanced, and also the sponsor of today's video. There's thousands of classes led by industry experts that can help you take skills, hobbies, and side hustles to the next level. In this case, I would like an in-depth learning experience on how to increase productivity while avoiding burnout, which is actually pretty easy to find amongst Skillshare's many different learning paths. There are even curated sequential class collections designed to master specific skills across many different categories like film, illustration, animation, design, pretty much anything you can think of. And I'm looking at taking this course on Avoiding Burnout by Brendan Ellis, seeing as it fits my learning interests pretty well. Now, if picking up new skills is something that interests you, take note that the first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial to Skillshare. Click that link and jump in. Now, there's also an ugly side to tech, a side that I think most people aren't really acknowledging, but it's living rent-free in the back of everyone's head. It's becoming increasingly clear that we as tech workers in the US are becoming complicit in the creation of a tech oligarchy. Most of us are simply earning a living. We're like soldiers, following orders. And while our individual tasks may seem harmless, they can add up to something much more ominous. Something as simple as removing a third-party API integration from your company's app. It seems harmless when it's written down on a Jira ticket, but when you take a step back and you look at the big picture, that API being removed could be the fact-checking API for a social media app used by millions of people who will now be more exposed and susceptible to misinformation. Corporations make decisions like this, and they break it down into easily executable tasks that make it easy to ignore what you're actually contributing to. And let's not forget the looming threat of AI over our heads. While it does provide incredible value now, we are quite literally racing to our own demise. If you look around, we're building models and machines that are designed to make most of us obsolete. And we're doing it at a rate that I don't think human beings can keep up with. A few years ago, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, literally said, "We will not be able to keep up with the speed of AI. that AI will probably result in the extinction of humanity.
I think if this technology goes wrong, it can go quite wrong. And we want to be vocal about that. We want to work with the government to prevent that from happening. But we try to be very clear-eyed about what the downside case is and the work that we have to do to mitigate that.
And yet, here he is, preparing to lead the charge over the edge of the cliff. It's something we all know, and despite that knowledge, here we all are, using and training these models that have the potential to enslave us. Now, I'm gonna give you 3 pieces of information, and you tell me what fictional company you think of when you hear them. The first, Black Hawk helicopters are capable of being piloted remotely. The second, many of the world's militaries have been investing in AI targeting technologies. The third, the most advanced AI models are now capable of replicating themselves and being deceitful. Does that not sound exactly like Skynet to you? The plot of Terminator describes Miles Dyson as a scientist who created an AI microprocessor to control electronically linked weapons and defend the United States. The government then tried to deactivate this AI after it gained self-awareness, and it defended itself by launching a nuclear attack on all of humanity, aka Judgment Day. Does none of that sound familiar to you? But alright. This isn't the Joe Rogan podcast, so I'm not going to drag this out. Conspiracy theories are fun, but we gotta live in reality. But I did want to bring that up just as some food for thought. Humanity as a whole is facing many different threats on many different fronts. And at this point, I think everyone working in tech is basically at the center of it. As a person working in tech, or someone who's potentially going to work in tech, be careful you're not the one who writes the line of code that dooms us all. No pressure.